Welcome to Down the Road. You know what? We love going down the road. I love going out to small towns, getting a chance to visit with a lot of different folks, and that's what we're doing today. That's what we're going to bring you. We're going to bring you a little flavor, I should say, of a small town that I love. That's the town of Forman, where we're broadcasting from today. In, I might add, Sargent County. And a lot of you are going to joke around and say that, you know what, Joel must have got picked up, but I didn't. I'm sitting right now with the Sargent County Sheriff, Travis PAEPER. Sheriff PAEPER, good to have you coming down the road with us.
Thanks for being here, Joel. And you haven't gotten picked up.
Not yet.
Not yet. That's right.
I knew that was
see
coming.
how this goes.
How did I know that was coming?
Well,
so,
you set it up pretty good.
Yeah. So why Forman? I mean, you can go anywhere. Law enforcement's in need everywhere.
Yeah. You know, back in 1995, I'd just got done working a stint undercover up in Grand Forks. And the only opening at the time was in Sargent County. And I applied. I was fortunate enough to get hired, stationed in Milner, and the community grew on me. I really didn't think I was staying in Sargent County, to be honest with you. I thought this was going to be a stepping stone to get some experience, move on. I really researched bigger areas. But again, the community grew, the county grew on me, and the whole area did. And I took up hunting and golf, and it really fit my need.
Yeah, and this area couldn't be better for that. I mean, we're broadcasting right now from the golf course here in Forman.
That's right.
It's kind of a destination spot for all of us 9-hole guys. You know?
Well, and if you look in this, just from Forman, in about a 25-mile radius, we have 7 golf courses. So 3 here in the county: Lidgerwood, Britton, Oaks, Lisbon,
yeah.
Grand Rapids. So yeah, there's a lot to do if you like the outdoors.
Yeah, no question about that. Now, small towns, for a long time had town cops. They had town police officers. I'm quite a bit older than you, but I remember it. You maybe don't remember it as much as what now you're having to fill that void, have to fill that need. The small towns just can't afford to have a law enforcement officer anymore, so they must partner with you at Sargent County.
Yeah, and actually that's how I had this opportunity. Was the city of Milner had lost their city cop. They had a tough time recruiting. Through a COPS grant, we were able to hire and partner with the county. And then I've seen that since, as I become sheriff. Gwinner had a city officer. He retired, Forman as well. It was just hard for them to recruit because a lot of those guys, back in the day, they would be the city cop in the morning during the school zone, and they'd mow grass in the afternoon or check water meters. The professions evolved from then, so it only makes sense to contract. We can recruit better applicants, and I think we have a stronger possibility of retaining them as well.
How many hours, Travis, goes into the training of one of your deputies before you're putting them out there? I mean, how many hours goes into that man or woman?
That all depends on who we hire. Your basic training through the academy is about 700 hours. Okay, wow. You come out with an associate's degree if you go to Devil's Lake or say Alex Tech. Then we have ongoing training, which in a rural area, it's really different than maybe in, let's say, Fargo or West Fargo, where we're not just patrolmen. We're serving papers, we're serving warrants, we're doing our own criminal investigations, where in a larger agency, they've got detectives. Your patrolmen are going to respond to the call, they're going to take the initial complaint, then they're going to pass it on to a detective to follow up on it, where we have to wear all those hats. So the training is ongoing.
I mean, so it can't be that easy then to find that person, to find that individual to join your force.
We had an opening for over a year before we filled that vacancy. We had other applicants. They just didn't maybe fit what our department was about. And we weren't just going to hire just to fill the void. We wanted to make sure we got the right person. And the person that we did hire ended up being from the Milwaukee area.
Really?
Yeah.
So that person's still with you?
He is, yes.
How does he like it? I'm curious.
He loves it.
Really?
He's looking.
You're putting a fishing rod and a shotgun in his hands, right?
And he wanted to go to be a game warden. That was his goal. And during the interview process, I asked, "How can you give me 5 years? can you at least tell me you'll give me 5 years? And now he's looking to buy a home.
Yeah.
So that tells me that he's going to concrete himself to the community.
You know, back in the rural water days, I used to just try to get them married.
Yeah, well,
You know, married.
Yeah.
Had an individual that moved to Ellendale from the Hankinson area, and when she got a great job in Ellendale, it was perfect because now you knew that they both were going to stay in that community, which, by the way, they love now. So,
Yeah.
In terms of where we're at today with law enforcement, and this is one of the reasons I was so happy that you're willing to come on, because I watch the news and I'm just disgusted by how law enforcement's being treated and talked about, and you know, some of the idiot ways that politicians are using law enforcement. I mean, how frustrating is that for you and your staff?
It's frustrating on a couple different levels. I think, number one, in general, it's leaving a bad taste in the public's mouth. And in law enforcement, there's a lot of guys that are getting out of the job. And I think there's a lot of young people that maybe were taking a look at law enforcement, but now they're having second thoughts.
Yeah.
So when you get to some of these larger agencies where they're having these retirements, it's going to be hard to fill all those vacancies. If you're down 200-300 officers, I mean, we're down one officer and it was tough for us. You get to some of these larger agencies and they're short-staffed. That puts a stress on the current people that are employed. You know, are they going to want to stay there if they're working all this overtime? And again, like you alluded to, you know, all the stuff that's in the media, and every time something happens, you know, is it defund the police, or is it, you know, the cops need more training, or we need to have social workers there instead of cops?
Who would have ever thought up the phrase defund the police?
I
mean,
yeah.
You wouldn't have wanted to cheat off that person in school because they were pretty dumb.
Well,
I mean, they were pretty idiotic.
Well, it's a phrase that, you know, I think this day and age people grasp onto. You know, there's a lot of new phrases that have came out in these last couple of years.
Yeah.
And with social media, it gets a lot of traction.
Yeah. I want to ask you as well, though, about, because there have been some things that have put a kind of that microscope on law enforcement. What do you learn from that? You know, when you see a police officer in Minneapolis kneeling on a man's neck too long, he ends up happening just exactly how it happened, ends up in jail himself on it. I mean, what lessons are learned for law enforcement from that?
Well, you know, the unique thing about law enforcement is I think we're learning every day. There's no call that's ever the same. You know, and we do train, and we do use mistakes as training, and officers do make mistakes. I mean, we all make mistakes. So I think that's the biggest thing, is if we can learn from it and make our training better and our practices better, that'll make life a lot easier for everybody involved.
So what about the youth? What about, I mean, both you and I were kids, and we'd love to be out there, and we love to you know, do things that are pretty foolish when you're kids. I mean, how do you get to go into high schools and talk to them about, hey, use your head tonight, you know, just because it's prom doesn't mean you should be getting home at 3 a.m. kind of a thing?
You know, and that's a luxury of a small community, because we aren't just the sheriff or the deputy or the highway patrolman. We're part of the community.
Right.
So we do a lot of policing tactics that I think, the term community-oriented policing is something that I think is inherent when you work in a small area. So I was lucky because I was able to coach football and basketball. So I got a connection with those kids.
Yeah.
Outside of the job.
Got to know them.
I got to know them. And to this day, now I'm friends with, and I might have a beer with some of these guys. You know, I coached for 20 years.
Sure.
But I had a connection outside of the job. So if I spoke to them, I could speak to them on a different level. I wasn't just a badge speaking at them. And I think that stands true for all of our rural areas, because we're part of the community. They see us. They can come to your house if they need something. So we have a really good connection with our communities.
I don't doubt that. You talked about being active in the community. I mean, there are so many things that I know you as other than a law enforcement officer. I mean that, you know, and because of that, you get a whole different level of respect and of understanding. And so I don't think that's just lip service when you say get to be a member of the community.
Well, and I think maybe it's a personality trait too. At least for myself, I'm outgoing. I've I'm not just gonna be done at work and go lock myself in my house for the night and go back to work. I'm active. And I think that's important for all young officers to know that. Be a part of your community.
Yeah. Well, I know it works for you. I do. How about the partnerships that Sargent County forms with Richland County and Dickey County and Ransom? I could start naming all the counties, Lemoore County for that matter. I mean, how do you go across the border into South Dakota? I mean, how many partnerships are there?
Every county that borders us, we have a partnership, and even beyond that, because an example, a lot of times at night, there's only one officer that's out working. So if they need backup, it's coming either from somebody who's in bed or from a neighboring county. Just a few years ago, there was an oil spill, a pipeline spill in Amherst, South Dakota, and we were one of the first agencies to go down there. And that was about mid-November, and that campaign went all the way through February. But we were sending guys down to Amherst every day to help with security down there.
Well, you do a good job. You do a good job, and you're in harm's way, you and your people. And I think anyone that doesn't support law enforcement is idiotic. So there's the final words I have on this subject.
Well, I appreciate that, and we've got the backing of the communities. I think we're unique living in rural North Dakota, especially here in the southeast.
And you should. Travis, good to have you on. Sergeant PAEPER, Sheriff PAEPER.
Yep.
Sergeant was years ago.
Yeah, that's right.
Appreciate it. When we come back, we're going to have the mayor of Forman on. We're going to get a chance to visit with Kevin Bowe. So stick around. More coming your way as we continue our trek down the road. Welcome back to Down the Road. As I mentioned, we love coming to these small towns. We do, because that's a lot of what Beck is. Beck News and the whole Beck network believes in small towns. They were the first ones that really went around and made sure you saw ball games that you thought you'd never see on TV. Well, look what's happening now. We're getting a chance to take down the road right here to beautiful Forman, North Dakota. In fact, I have the mayor with me right now, Kevin Bowe. Kevin, good to have you coming down the road with us.
Yes, thanks for coming to Forman.
So much to be proud of. I've known this town for years. It was in my legislative district, so I'm not going to try to kid you that I've spent a lot of time knocking on doors, but just good people, first and foremost. Good people.
Yes, Forman, we talk about a forever hometown here and what we have to offer as far as a great place, from a great school system to the villas that's here, from an assisted living standpoint, the manor that's here, the health care that's here. With a Sanford clinic in town, we have that to cover you.
So because you get around, you go to a lot of these, what makes Forman unique? What makes, if somebody's going to say, tell me something about Forman, what's one of the first things you're going to say?
I think it's our people. The people that are here have had a long-standing tradition. And when we get new people into town, it's how do we adapt them into understanding some of the traditions that we have, getting into the culture, getting involved in activities. Because if you're not involved in a small town, you don't get it out to do things, and you think, oh, I got to run to Fargo to do something, versus, oh, I forgot this was going on in town tonight. Let's go to pizza and bingo tonight, so that we can do that activity. You see your friends, and whether it goes from there, if it's a house party afterwards or everybody goes to the bar, there's something to do.
Has COVID made people appreciate their hometown more? And in this sense that, I found myself, being in town or staying at home or closer to home way more than, hey, let's get in the car and drive to Fargo or Bismarck or something like that. I'm wondering if that was the way it was for Forman too.
Yeah, no doubt. Over the last year and a half, almost 2 years here, that it's impacted us. You have your people that are comfortable, especially if you've got family in town, or that key group of friends that you're willing to hang out with. And I think everybody has that understanding as far as, hey, keep me in the loop as far as what your health status is. The North Dakota Department of Health, we have the Sargent County District Health right here in town, so they've kept us well informed of what we could do for options, what people can do, the testing, the vaccines, all of that piece that's available, and that they've offered as a service to the communities. You don't have to run off to Fargo to get some of that. You don't have to run off to Aberdeen to get some of that. And from a shop local standpoint, it's definitely been a benefit to our economic impact. Our local shoppers, our businesses have seen it.
It's been one of the good that came
Yes.
out of this crappy last couple of years here. I want to ask you this, so you get a chance to speak to it. I load up a bus with 50 kids. They're about 7th, 8th graders. And I started heading to Forman, and I said, we're going to the Sargent County Museum. How much time am I going to need to make it worthwhile? And what are they going to see?
You're going to see a vast history of Sargent County, but even there's a lot of North Dakota unique history in there. No doubt the Bobcat exhibit that they have in there, from the Melrose to the Clark to the Ingersoll Rand to the Doosan days, it's all there. You can get a great understanding of what that history is. Timing-wise, that's a good question, Joel.
Yeah, I mean,
There's
the
every
whole
time
point-
you go.
I've been in there. Don't short yourself.
No.
If you're going to take kids there, take them right away in the morning, because you're still going to want to be there in the afternoon.
Yep. Yeah, I was just gonna say 3 hours is to do it a little bit of justice, but if you really get the Pat and the group down there that get them out and involved in a story or history of it, you're looking at 5 hours, I would say, at a minimum.
At a minimum.
Yep.
I've been through it, and names from the past. Merdine Gulspig was a good friend back in my rural water days, and he used to talk to me about the Sargent County Museum, the Sargent, you know what I mean? And it was just cool to see how much pride he had in it, and that's right here in Forman.
Yeah, and no doubt, I think when it first started, it was really heavy on agriculture and veteran memorials and stuff like that. That was in there. It's expanded. Even now they got an exhibit in there of each of the Sargent County towns around. The old Forman Phantoms, the Rutland Arrows. Those type of things that they've got inside of there that people have donated. You look at Rudy Rathard and what he's put into the museum as far as old tractors and some of the unique vehicles that he's had over the years that you don't see in many small towns.
That's cool, though. I mean, that is just cool. You mentioned a little bit earlier about some of the places that people live in town. How Forman has become this place where people live out the rest of their life. They're close to their families. They've got a community feeling to it. And you've got professional staff to help them. Are they able to stay ahead of it? Because staff's hard, you know that in your professional life. I mean, are you going to be able to keep these places open?
No doubt the last couple of years and how the crunch workforce has happened. I think you talk a lot about baby boomers, and it doesn't get a lot of publicity, but those baby boomers, with the stock market being high, they're leaving the job market earlier, maybe a year or two earlier than we were expected. So to get people to come into those jobs, a lot of these businesses have had to get created, whether it's a sign-on bonus, a moving bonus, a living expense, something that they have to offset just the normal day-to-day wage with, that they can draw in those people to the small town. But you also see a lot of people, we've had people from California that have moved here in the last year that are just looking to get out of some of that area. They want to get to a small town. We always talk about Class B. We're a Class B town. Mm-hmm. How do you get those Class B kids to come back to Forman and make it that forever hometown?
State champions in 1979. You know how I know? We beat you 3 times that year. You never beat us, and we still lost to Kindred. Never mind. I'm not bitter.
No,
not bitter. You had some great guys.
And no doubt we've had a good sports history as
Yeah.
far as in the community. Look at the school and the facility that the school is. Updated over the years. You got great faculty, you got great programs.
Yeah, exactly. So, I remember it as the Bobcat Open, but this golf course where we're broadcasting right now,
Yep.
You take this and Oaks and Grand Rapids and Lisbon, and that still, for many of us, is how we're going to spend a day getting 36 holes in.
Yeah.
I mean, you got these 9-hole beautiful courses that are kept up, and
Yep.
we just have a blast with it.
Yeah, the second weekend in July is pretty much the GOLF weekend. It's your Grand Rapids, your Oaks, your Lisbon, your Forman. Number of sponsors over the year. Right now, ReadyTech, the DRTEL network, has took it over, and they've done a great job keeping that tournament going. You got 144 golfers in a weekend. There ain't any course in North Dakota that sees 144 golfers in a weekend unless there's something special going on.
Exactly. And the community itself, we were talking about people in the community, yourself included. You won't want to get to that because you don't brag. But the truth is, you've been out there helping.
Yep.
The volunteer time, hop on the mower, help in, pitch out, it takes something like that to keep a place this beautiful.
Yes, and no doubt, I think Southeast North Dakota, we've had a great facility. The golf course has been in great shape. It's got one of the hardest finishing holes in the state.
Really?
I've seen a lot of.
I've never cussed on that hole before.
I've seen a lot of good rounds come in, and you get to 9, and you get a 9, and it ruins a good round.
It does. Not that I'm whining. That's twice in one segment. I am whining. So all in all, you're young, you're bright. You could raise your family. You could do a lot of things anywhere. You know, why'd you choose Forman? This I can tell is going to be home for you. Period.
Yeah. No doubt. I think in those younger years, you all thought, hey, I'm going to go off. I'm going to go live in a big city and do a fancy job. But as things progress, you know, and you want your kids to kind of have somewhat of a life that you had, but better. And I think the school gives that opportunity, the workforce, the jobs. No doubt I have family here. There's a bunch of Bopes in the area, and we, you know, do things together as a family. You're familiar with family experiences and how you guys all do stuff together. With that, you know, it's something I wanted my kids to experience. You also got agriculture, you know, that draws a lot of these people back to, you know, family farms.
Yeah. Well, Kevin, you're good at what you do. And I want to thank you for letting us broadcast from here today. Forman is nothing but fun for me. I love the town, been here a million times, and plan on being back a lot. And as far as you taking me out there golfing, you got to give me at least 7 aside. Okay?
Yes.
Is that fair?
Yes, I
You
will
shot
start
at
to do
36
that.
this summer, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah, that means you're going to have to give me at least 7 aside. So thanks for coming on.
Yes, no, and I appreciate, you know, you guys coming out here, taking the opportunity to come to Forman, getting this experience, getting the exposure for the city of Forman is great for all of us. So thank you.
When we come back, he's a walking history book. He's my friend, Bill Anderson. He's going to tell us a little bit about the history of Sargent County and whatever else I ask him right after this as we continue our trip down the road. Welcome back to Down the Road. You know, we are coming to you live from Forman, and when I think of Sargent County, there's one individual that I instantly think about. He's a regular on my radio show, and we need to make him more of a regular here on the TV show as well, and that's Bill Anderson, the old country lawyer from Rutland, North Dakota. And I never say a former Marine because they've trained me by now to say once a Marine, always a Marine. Bill, good to have you coming down the road with us.
Well, thanks, Joel. Thanks for inviting me on. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
You're like a walking history book. I mean, you understand history as well as anybody I'm ever going to meet in my life. So tell people about Sargent County.
Well, Sargent County, it was born in 1883. Prior to that, it had been part of Ransom County. But they decided, because the primary watercourse through Ransom County was the Cheyenne River, and the primary watercourse through Sargent County was a Wild Rice River, that the two areas should be separate counties. At least that was one of the reasons why they decided to separate Ransom County and form Sargent County. So back in my former life as an attorney, there were a few occasions, it didn't happen too often, but there were a few occasions when we were researching titles for property up in the northeastern corner of Sargent County, where we had to go to Lisbon, to Ransom County, to get the original patents, the original filings for homesteaders and that kind of information, because at the time that land was settled, this area was part of Ransom County.
So there's 53 counties in North Dakota. Each one has a story to tell. I get that, but what makes Sargent County unique? What separates it from the other 52?
Oh gosh, now well, one thing that I think that we have here in Sargent County, and it's always been there, is a a spirit of independence and self-reliance, and somehow or other we've always managed to come up with the resources to be able to maintain that. You know, where other counties have kind of given up, or if not given up, at least gotten discouraged. We have always managed to have something, an ace in the hole that has helped us to maintain our buoyancy and our optimism and our spirit of adventure here in Sargent County. And of course, the big thing right now, and has been the big thing for the past 40, 50 years, is the Bobcat factory up in Gwinner that has helped us to maintain our population and keep our economy going. Sargent County, as you probably know from looking at the statistics out of the state of North Dakota, has one of the highest per capita income counties in the state of North Dakota. And that's primarily due to those good union jobs up in the Bobcat factory in Gwinner. And that, you know, when they talk about rising tide lifts all boats, well, those wages at the Bobcat factory in Gwinner have raised everybody up. You know, granted, everybody probably isn't making the same wages in every job that are being made at the factory, but everybody else has to compete with the factory for labor, and labor has always been in short supply in North Dakota. So
You mentioned Sargent County being one of the top average incomes in the state of North Dakota, Ransom County as well.
Yes.
You know, because of the fact that it's so close to Sargent County
Right.
and that plant. Just for the record, you know, the other counties that people looked at were coal counties. You know, the other two highest counties were up in the middle of the coal patch. So I guess my point in saying this is, why are we so afraid of unions? I mean, Bill, those unions have produced good jobs. The workers in those unions have done a good job. That Bobcat's a great product. You know, the economy works with it. You know, you're a walking historian. When you look at how unions were treated years ago, you know, and how they're in some ways being treated today, it leaves me shaking my head a little bit.
well, I'm probably prejudiced, Joe. I grew up in a union household. My dad worked for the railroad and was a member of the Brotherhood of Railway Telegraphers for almost his entire railroad career of 40 years, 41 years. And so I always put my feet under the table at a union household, and my dad never missed an opportunity to remind us that the groceries on the table were there primarily because he made a pretty good wage as a union employee of the Great Northern Railway. So, but I don't know. I think that people have been afraid of paying their workers a higher wage for years because they see it as taking money away from their business, away from their bottom line as a business owner or even as a farmer. If you pay your employees more, that means there's less for you. However, I think that the experience at the Bobcat factory, I think the experience of railroads, the experience in the coal companies has shown that when you have well-trained, experienced union workers, your productivity increases to the point that it more than makes up for what the increase in wages is. And Bill Ammerman is a guy who could really speak to this for you. As Bill was an executive here at the union at the factory at Gwinner for many years, and really knows the numbers in that regard. But I think that there's also just been a result of a pretty strong propaganda campaign by management that goes way back to the middle of the 19th century, when unions were first arising as a result of the Industrial Revolution that changed the balance of things. Prior to the 1850s, a boss and an employee probably had grown up together and knew each other, and maybe even were friends, and probably went fishing together, and who knows what. But once the Industrial Revolution came along and you had the concentration of capital, larger businesses, big factories, thousands of employees, and a few people at the top controlling this, that all went away, and the laborers lost their leverage. They couldn't go to the boss, who was their friend from their entire life, and say, "Hey boss, we're having a tough time, we need some help." They could go to their boss, the president of the coal company or the president of the railroad, or whatever other industry it was at that time, and say, "We need more money," and the boss would say, "Well, get out of here, because you're not getting it." and that's that's just the way it happened. And when they tried to organize unions to start with, the management went to the state legislatures, and in many cases had unions classified as criminal organizations, and prosecuted and persecuted labor organizers. There were violent clashes, all of that stuff, and the bosses were not successful in keeping unions out, but they did have some success in their propaganda campaign in planting a seed in the minds of a lot of Americans that unions were responsible for all of this unrest.
Well, and that's still out there today, unfortunately, with some. Bill, I could do this all day. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
Good time, Joel. Thanks for inviting me, and we'll see you on the radio.
Bill Anderson, ladies and gentlemen. When we come back, that Bill Hammerman that he was talking about, we've got him. We'll talk a little bit Bobcat right here as we continue our trip down the road. We're still traveling down the road here in Sargent County, where I got to tell you, I love doing these shows on the road. I just do. Getting a chance to get out there and meet people and see old friends. Bill Ammerman and I ran for the legislature together. We won. We served for a lot of years out in Bismarck, and he's from Forman. He's living here right now, and basically he's living on this golf course, quite frankly, where we're broadcasting from. Billy, good to have you coming down the road with us.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks for having me.
How's retirement treating you?
Retirement is good. As I think about it, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be doing, but I'm enjoying it, whatever that is.
There's some truth to that, isn't there?
Well, you wake up and whatever comes along, you deal with it.
You can work in media. You're not sure what you're supposed to do either, but you just keep doing it. So we were talking, when Bill Anderson was on a little bit ago, he was talking about Bobcat and what a major role that has played in this area, this region. And when you left Bobcat, how many employees were there? How many folks were working for Bobcat?
Well, just probably that punched the clock, not counting salary. There's probably around 1,200, I would think.
That's a lot.
Like that. Yeah.
That's a lot. That means a lot of your friends, neighbors, and everybody worked at Bobcat.
Yes, they did.
How did you enjoy it?
I enjoyed it. especially the people, like you said, the friends. And that's what you make there is friends. And you go and you punch a clock, and you leave your friends at home, but then you meet your new friends when you get to work. So
Sure.
it was good.
I mean, all those years as head of the union. I mean, how many years were you head of the union?
8 years.
8 years. That's hard. I mean, at the time when you were head of the union, I don't think workers' comp could have been run worse. I really don't. I know that you and I worked so hard on that in the legislature to bring some level of common sense to it. I mean, we went through a period when we couldn't connect with governors. They didn't realize it. We tried so hard. It's better now. I mean, it really is. There's more of an understanding of the importance of the workforce. But God, Bill, it was terrible for a while.
Well, I was president from like 92 or 91 until the 8 years. And you know, in the 90s, you served in the Senate at that time. That's when workers' comp was basically gutted and was really turned into a nightmare for the workers.
Yeah.
And when we were in the legislature, you were leading the way, and we had a lot of good friends. Ed Christensen, you remember him, and Steve Allvetter, and you worked very hard. We all worked very hard to get it back under the control of the governor. And once that happened, with the initiated measure and stuff, then
it changed.
it come around.
Yeah,
Yeah.
somebody with compassion
Yeah.
and actually understanding of workforce played a role in it. What did you do at the plant?
I was for 28 years I was there. Most of the time I was a forklift driver, but I worked in fab too, running punch presses.
Okay.
and stuff.
And the reason I ask that is because I don't think people understand how diverse it is once you get in the plant. You know, just to say you're a worker doesn't mean you're on some assembly line. It means you're, I know from touring the plant, being around the plant at different times, you were all over that plant.
Yes, and once you're hired and you build up a certain amount of seniority, you can bid to different jobs. You might be hired as an assembly person, but then a bid comes along in welding, so you can bid into welding, which is a higher paid grade and stuff. So you get an opportunity to do just about just about most things up there if you get the certain seniority to do it.
Yeah, I think you served in the legislature longer than, how many years were you in the legislature?
I think it's the same as you, 14.
Was it 14? Okay, so we're 14 years we had served together. You came in after me and I left before you, kind of a thing, but that's a lot of years. And a lot of years of making policy for the state of North Dakota. When you look back on it, grade it. How important was it in your life, and are you happy you did it?
I'm very happy I did it. I'm not sure how it come about. It was I first elected just like this year was a redistricting year, and you know all about 2002
Yeah.
very well and stuff, and it ended up being an open seat, but it was very enjoyable. And I watch some of the session on TV. You know, we get it on cable now. I watch it sometimes, and I really don't recognize it from when we served back to what I'm seeing today. So.
Well, good people are getting out because of that. I mean, I'm serious. Nicole Pullman, Republican, very reasonable, friends on all sides of the aisle. The community loves her. Nope, I'm not dealing with this anymore. I quit. And she was honest. She said it's because of the nature of how the legislature is. You take an Aaron Oban, good person, liked on both sides of the aisle. Both those women raising families. She said it's just too contentious. It's toxic there, and she pulled the pin as well.
Yeah.
They're not going to run for re-election. I mean, Bill, how the heck did we get to there?
You're asking me to explain that the unexplainable, so to speak. You know, does it evolve back when Trump was first elected? There was a big tsunami. You know, that kind of happened all over the country, statewide and stuff. So I don't know how we got to where we are now. I mean, I have my own personal opinions on it, but I'm not sure.
Well, no, I'm going to say it. He made it okay for people to hate each other, and that shows. It's showing, and it's like either you're here or you're there, and if you're there, you're a bad person. And you know, you and I were in the minority in the legislature, and that didn't mean we couldn't get something done.
No.
I mean, you mentioned Ed Christensen. There were people on the other side of the aisle that you could sit down with and just have a conversation with and say, hey, you know, can we fix this? And then there was a level of compromise and a level of support, and it's
Well,
just
I
like
like to-
those days are gone.
I like to think when we served, like you say, in the minority. In the majority, we served with some tough customers. You had Bob Stenjum as your majority leader over there, and he was a tough customer.
Sure.
But you could sit down and talk to him. You might not like what he says, but he'd listen to you. And
Absolutely.
maybe make it. And I had to start out with Rick Berg, and he was a tough customer. Of course, and I had Al Carlson. They probably don't come any tougher than Al was up
Yeah.
there. But and many other ones. But you could talk to them, and they'd give you the respect due and listen to you. I'm not saying they agree with you, but I don't see that up there. No, I really don't. Just watching it. Of course, I'm not there, so on a personal level. So.
But there's going to be more good people that get out because of that. There's going to be more good people that say they don't want to be part of it if that's the way it's going to be, because there's way more decent folks out there. And here's another thing that I see happening, and you know that this was planned. You take a district like we're in right now, District 26. Those legislators from this district are toxic. They are. And so what did the Republican Party do? They didn't want to deal with them, so they got rid of them. They got rid of their legislative district, and they're the ones who did it. They said, we don't want to work with these guys. So they took away the district here and patched us all into different areas.
Yeah, they did. I think part of it, what's happening up there is the ones that are running now, I think they kind of forget that they're not the boss, they're the servants of the people and stuff, but they go there with their own personal agenda, so to speak, and stuff, and if it isn't their way, it's the wrong way, so to speak. I don't think there's a level of to remember that you're put there to represent the people, not tell the people what's best for them, but they're supposed to tell you how to do it.
Could you imagine serving in the days when there was $8 billion in a bank somewhere? I mean, the one time we had an ending fund balance of I want to say $20 million. We were on that tight of a needle when it came to it, and here you sit now, and it's like we're debating whether or not we can invest in this or that. We got ranchers getting taken by the meat packers, and we don't seem to address that. We've got, you know, schools that are sitting there having to raise property taxes, and we don't see. I mean, we've got money now to do something, Bill.
It used to be if we had an ending balance of $10 million, we were doing a pretty good job and stuff.
Yeah.
And now with this $8 billion, they all, well, there's like 141 between Senate and the House, and they got 141 different ideas what they're supposed to be doing with this money.
Exactly. All in all, when you look back on that legacy of Bill Ammerman being in a suit and tie all the time, what do you think of?
I think, you know, it's amazing because, you know, I wasn't a lawyer, I wasn't a businessman, I just worked at the factory and stuff, and for 14 years do the job where I got reelected every 4 years or whatever the case would be. I like to think I was doing something right the last 14 years up there, and I feel I did a good job, and you know, and a lot of people probably feel the other way, but
That's not true.
That's the way it
No,
works.
you know, there's a reason you got elected and got elected and got elected. And you're the perfect fit for this district. Where we build Bobcats, you had a pulse inside that plant. You knew the people that worked inside that plant. You knew what they wanted and needed. And quite frankly, I was proud to serve with you. So.
Well, I served with you and Pam, and I couldn't have had better running mates. But then I got to serve with Jerry Kelch and Jim Dodson-Rod, and I couldn't have had another two.
Yeah.
I was, and when I served up there, I was lucky. My first two sessions, I got to sit back and learn and listen and watch, because there was a lot of good incumbents up there that I served with that carried the load and let me kind of ease into the position. Once I was there so many sessions, I got to be one of the older ones, so I had to take a more bigger role, so
Sure.
to speak. Yeah.
Bill, thanks for coming on.
Thank
Appreciate
you,
it.
Joe, very
When
much.
we come back, we're going to close out our trip from Forman here. That's right. We're going to end our time going down the road. You know, Beck News. When I took this job with Beck News, what I thought of right away was how they liked going out to towns like the one I'm in right now. They like to go out to Forman, and they like to bring sports back into people's living rooms that might not have been able to attend that grandson's football game or that granddaughter's basketball game. That's what I thought of when I thought of Beck. And then this got developed, Beck News. Well, I got to tell you, as far as down the road goes, we are very, very thankful that we get a chance to come to towns like this, to come to Forman and tell the story of Forman, tell the story of Sargent County. Let those folks get a chance to talk into this microphone and make sure they get a chance to brag up where they live. And you know why? Because they're proud of where they live. And they should be proud of where they live. We're going to keep doing that. We're gonna keep telling stories like the one they have here in Forman of how they're out there, they're building bobcats, they're farming, they're ranching, they're hunting, they're fishing, they're doing everything, they're golfing, which is where we're broadcasting from right now. In other words, they're out there living their life, raising their family, and calling this home. And so the day that on down the road that we forget that, the day that we decide not to do that, is the day that I think we've failed at what we do. And as far as I'm concerned, we're not going to do that. We're going to continue to come to towns like this and help them, or at least give them the opportunity to tell that story, because they've earned it. And that's really who and what we are. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not going to bring you those hard-hitting guests, and it doesn't mean that we're not going to tear apart certain subjects. That's part of my job too. I understand it. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to broadcast most of the time from the studio out of Fargo, but it does mean that I absolutely love getting a chance to come out to towns like this. And don't forget, for many of you, you might live in Fargo, you might live in Bismarck, Minot, Grand Forks, Williston. I don't know where you're watching from, but you all have roots to places like Forman. You all do. And so we're going to keep doing this. Until then, good ride with you folks.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell.